that lays a lava. It takes 5 minutes of water for the lava to mature into a full Saharan fly. If you got the lava, or maybe it's only rains for 2 minutes, and then it lays there in the dust, or maybe it lays there for some 7 or 8 years or more, just lays there in the dust until it rains again to get its full 5 minutes worth of water. If you took the lava after 2 minutes of water and you cut it in half and you put it up on your mounting piece at home, or maybe some 7 or 8 years later, you decide to come back and sprinkle a little water on the 2 halves. The 2 halves would kick and struggle to die. It's as if water was necessary for death, but water was not necessary for life. The minute that I realised this, I realised that life could exist inside a dry state. And how much it makes sense for us to be looking at the things on the outside of us as if it has a life force. To imagine that you could see the tree and give this life force a persona, to be seeing the tree with your whole self. Or you could see a tree just as a tree, something that grows in the ground. Or you could imagine that the tree has emotions and can feel you. For those of you who look after plants, these plants get to know you. And those people who are watering those plants, the plants know who you are. And if it's in need of water, they emit a sound which is recordable. So all that it could be, whatever it is in front of you, whether it's a horse or a flower or another human being, is the sum of what that is inside us. So I'd say this course is about enlightenment, and the process of enlightenment is turning the light inward. I met this man, old man, a mentor of mine, up in the mountains, and he lived in a grass hut and a bamboo fence, and didn't have any material possessions. And hardly anybody called on this man. And this man hardly called on anybody else. And this man hardly had very little language. This man was living completely in his senses. And he looked at me, and he could see that I was looking at him, and he said that there was 2 ideals. And he said that his first ideal was a sense of stillness, that I could imagine that this was like the ripples on the ocean, and yet the depth ever so still and serene. And he was gesturing to himself. And he said that this was like a steady state stream. That if I were to imagine myself, no matter where I would go, where I'd be looking, the things on the outside would be changing. But the one thing that would stay constant, he told me, was the universality of the inside of our minds. And he said that this was like a steady state stream, like a flow of liberation, like a river of completeness inside self. And then he looked at me and he said, there's this other ideal. And he said, it's about movement. And he looked at me and he could see that I was moving. And he asked me to think about this on the way down the mountain. To imagine the rocks underneath my feet shaping the skin on the soles, that my body would be creating the shape of itself as a result of the friction underneath my feet as I walked back down the mountain. And he said it was this friction was what it was that gave us the shape of things. And he said that this friction was like anxiety. And I think the thing to me was that he was saying was that where there's movement, there's the possibility of some anxiety. And that where he was wanting for nothing, that he had everything. And that here I was seeking things, and that there was he could see that there was movement. And that this movement was what it was that was shaping me. So maybe some anxiety is part and parcel to movement and challenging yourself. And I think that those images which are the most appealing to you are those images that are just a little bit outside yourself, because they're creating movement. So we're going to be learning some processes of change. We're going to be learning how the brain processes information and what happens when all of a sudden you feel excellent about something, what's occurred in the brain, and what's occurring in the brain when you feel the essence of genius in your day. How to go about accessing state-specific behaviour through the use of your body. And I think that this is the state of the art. This is the latest understanding that we have on how the brain works, and that the body is the mind's experience of itself, that we perceive everything through our body. So that when you're feeling light, or you hear the word weight, no matter which way you hear those words, they mean the same thing. Light and weight. Light and weight are phonological ambiguities. The word weight is involving the physiology of being held back. And it's important to feel light in your body to be able to see in your mind's eye. So when you're feeling light in your body, what enables us to have this perception of feeling light is actually the pressure receptors in the vertebrae. Because when you're feeling heavy, right? When you're feeling heavy, and all those things, in fact, that involve in tension and effort, generally are contracting the body, and so it's possible to feel heavy this way. And the way that we feel light is where there's a lengthening of the vertebrae. And this is what enables us to actually perceive a sense of feeling light in our body. So let's start with Johnny, and we're going to go around. We'll introduce ourselves, share your name, and something that you're learning about.
My name is Johnny. I'm learning two things. One is how well I do on 30 minutes sleep, and how refreshed I can feel and how excited I am about what's going on. Just a little bit, just enough sleep. The other thing I'm learning is that I enjoy very much talking to people about what I'm interested in. The things just flow out naturally and spontaneously, and I really love being with people when I'm being with what I enjoy.
I'm Bruce Brown. I'm from New Orleans. I'm a family therapist, and I was telling some of you I'm very interested in how to utilize the body more in therapy. I think there's much too much verbalization, and I think there's probably much more effective ways of helping people change what they want to change through the use of the body. And I keep hearing about NLP. So I'm here to get what I can from it and give what I can.
Excellent, Bruce. Good stuff. I agree with Bruce. I think there's a real emergence, actually, of this idea of affecting change from the back of the brain to the front, rather than the front of the brain down. The front of the brain down would have you cognitively talking about pride, for instance. And you could talk about pride, right, until you were black and blue in the face. But I would never feel pride. I would never feel pride until I put my shoulders back and my heart out. Wouldn't matter how much a cognitive rational therapist talked about pride. This person would never be able to feel pride, actually, until they put their shoulders back and their heart out. This is very much what this course is about. Excellent, Bruce.
My name is Patrick Dempsey. I'm from East California. I do bodywork, shiatsu, and reflexology. And I think what I'm learning these days is with the hands-on describing states and saying, hey, this is pride. This is recognizing it. And using more verbal the hands-on.
So Patrick uses his hands, and there's ways he creates trance, certainly, with the use of his hands. We're going to be talking about how to go about creating trance through the use of your hands. And I think what a wonderful thing it is that he has people in such a relaxed state, and then he has the ability to use some metaphor, talk about some experience that he has had, and have some insight and affect the process of change and healing and relaxation, and the benefit to the person through the use of voice. Excellent.
I'm Richard Powell, and what I'm learning is to let other people be just the way they are. It's a whole new experience for me, and sort of a codependent sort of person most of my life, until I did some NLP work with my nephew, which got me interested in this whole field. And so it takes a lot less energy to just let people be. I got my hands full of stuff.
I'm Penny Farah, and what I'm in the process of learning is patience and how to relax.
I'm Tanya Fernandez, and I'm learning self-love. My name is Christiana Stokow, and many things that I'm learning. I don't know if you should Sure. I feel there are many things that I'm learning, but one of the things that I'm really interested in now, obviously being here and learning, is how to be more receptive in communication when someone is speaking to me, that I can be there as fully as is possible. Thank you, David. It's Christiana.
I think that's excellent, and I think that one thing that's about listening is the ability to be able to listen is the tone of voice that we use with each other. Because the tone of voice that you use is very important. If you want people to hear the information firsthand and then be able to recall it like that, then the tone of voice that we use with each other is very important. And the ability that I have to be able to project my voice into your head, wherever you are. And the tonality, there's a tonal band which enables you to receive the information without having a physiological defense mechanism shunt the information through another place in the brain. So when you are open to the universe, to take in auditory information. The predominant way when you are taking in information and you are open to auditory information is when you read. And when you read, we use our own tone. So there's a tonal band that's quite specific, matter of fact, that is the major mechanism, tonal band, in which when we are open to the universe, to take in information. You know, the printed word we sense has a little bit more credence because it's printed than the spoken word. There sometimes tends to be more defences actually when we're open to the universe to take in auditory information when someone's speaking, and so the way that you can speak to this person so that they're hearing is to be able to modify your tone so that it's more or less reaching them at a tonal band that's more or less close to their reading tone. So chances are, if I were to give you a set of instructions to go somewhere, that you would want to repeat those instructions back to me to know that you had them. And in repeating them back to me, you would be putting them in your own tone. So we're going to be learning about people's strategies, how somebody who is really excellent at doing something, how they do it. And you're going to learn how to be able to unpackage what you see so that there's something that is excellent. It's possible for you to be able to find out how to do this by having these skills to unpackage the piece of behaviour. The other thing is if you have an internal dialogue and you're also listening, then you're kind of doing two things at the one time. It's like listening to this and sometimes having a conversation at another level inside, and then all of a sudden that conversation that you're having inside starts to take over the surface, surface conversation. So we're going to be learning what we do with our body to be able to go into physiology that's truly kind of a listening mode and not so much internal dialogue. How you're able to shift yourself out of internal dialogue into a mode where we're listening. Okay, Christian.
My name's Terry, and I think what I've been learning is how to be what I know. Learning how to totally internalize what I've amassed all these years and try to use it and find out what it is that's applicable and what is unnecessary baggage.
What was your name?
Terry.
Terry. I guess in a way we could look at what is unnecessary. I'll tell you what, I'll look at what's unnecessary and you look at what is necessary. Who would you rather be? Okay.
I'm David. I hope to learn from David Jubb how to communicate better. I've learned the hard way that communication via speech only is very limiting and handicapping. And to use other forms of communication to better communicate, to better understand what everybody's trying to tell me. So I'm not just hearing what they're telling me, and I hopefully get someone else out of it. It's all communications.
What a wonderful thing it is to listen with understanding to each other. Because I'm not going to say anything that you don't already know if it makes sense to you. If it makes sense to you, it'll be jiving with something you already understand inside. Isn't that interesting, eh? When anybody would ever tell us some new theory about something, everybody goes, oh yeah, that's right. Because it jives with something you already understand inside. So if I'm going to be sharing things, and I think if you're understanding this, then it's jiving with something you already understand inside. Possibly I'm putting words to that. And I would say that most of us by the age of 6 are understanding the essence of the universe. We're understanding the social laws and mores of being social and the interaction and things like that. And from this time onward, we're learning to articulate what it is that you know inside. So mostly I think that our knowledge is vast, and our ability to articulate that, we are learning how to do this. And so the tone of voice that we use, the pace that we use, the intonation, what words we mark out, there's a way that you could tune into someone who's on the phone, and by this pace of their voice you could know that they were somewhat in a visual mode, and being able to bring them back a little bit more into that space of pace that's a little bit more in between, is taking the person more into an auditory mode. So if you were giving instructions over the phone to someone and you wanted them to be able to hear what it was that you were saying, it would be important that you were able to start to develop a pace, in fact, that was a little bit more in between, because a higher, faster pace is taking the person more into a visual system, and a slower, more drawn-out pace is taking the person more into a kinesthetic or a feeling mode, and somewhere in between is in auditory. Anyway, so there's much that's there, and I think it was fascinating to me to hear that there was a way for us to really go below the surface and to be listening with our hearts to each other, and not just our ears, but to be listening to each other with our hearts, so that we are listening to your intent of what you are meaning, what your meaning is inside, coming from your heart. Okay. Good on you, Dave.
My name's Ginger, and I have two things that come to mind right now. I'm learning to breathe. The last few days I have become very conscious of how important my breath is. So I have been consciously sitting up straight and breathing. And the other thing that I'm very interested in right now is listening to a powerful voice inside myself. I had a dream the other night that woke me up and shook me, and it was something that I interpreted to mean that I had a very powerful creative voice inside that I haven't been focusing on. And so right now I'm learning to listen to that voice inside myself.
My name is Ned, and lately I've been learning to project enthusiasm kinesthetically. It's been really interesting to get feedback from people in terms of the projection of enthusiasm. That's one of the things that I see that is, shall we say, diminished in our society. after the age of about 15 is enthusiasm. And people that have it seem to be just incredibly happy and just love life. And the people that don't have it are in pain. It doesn't much matter what their bodies are doing in terms of somebody has pain and they have enthusiasm that flash a little bit. When somebody has a perfect body with no pain and lacks enthusiasm, they're always in pain. So I've been working with that.
We are really going to be talking about this emotional state and the effect of this on our immune system, and not so much that somebody is seeking pleasure. There would be an indication of moving from the dark into the light. And not so much avoiding either, but more or less a feeling of being at one with all things. I think that's somewhat like a sage-like quality. So that's okay. That's enthusiasm is excellent. You can be enthusiastic certainly and not be seeking pleasure. And someone who is enthusiastic, this person has the use of all of their brain, and we're going to be talking about that today actually. Okay.
My name is Annie Jubb, and learning about language, learning how to language the things that I know inside, and I'm really interested in the depth and range.
Give us an example. What specifically are you learning about language, or ability to language what you are understanding inside? Can you give us an example?
I'm learning how to be a teacher, so I'm learning about movement, being able to move and speak, and shape things for a group. I'm learning also about sales, sort of really interested in that ancient language.
My name's Vivian, and lately I've been learning to be centered and mindfulness.
Can you talk about it, please?
I've been learning to regain center again and maintain this.
So the center is everywhere, right? And not that you would be sensing that there's something other than the center, because then you would be always leaving someplace. And if you're already at the center, well then, that's it.
My name is Alec, and I originally got involved in this 5 years ago into whole brain, becoming a whole brain person. Annexing the right side of the brain and operating out the center. And through that I've learned that when you're a whole brain person, that you have compassion, you have forgiveness, you don't be, revenge is not within your power, and you're even a very sensuous and feeling person, you're a whole brain person. And it's really fulfilled my life beyond anything I ever expected to be.
I didn't catch your name.
Alec. A-L-E-X.
Alec. Okay, Alec, yeah. Okay.
My name is Alice, or Allie as some call me, and I'm learning how capable I am of having what I want, and creating what I want, and also creating what is most beneficial for myself and everything involved in whatever situation it is. And just loving it.
Making the most of the moment.
Yes.
Living in the moment.
My name is David. I'm learning creativity, once again. For some reason there was a block here for about 10 years. Something I don't really understand, but I'm learning to use it once again. Also trying to learn a little bit about the body, immune system, especially as it applies to such diseases as arthritis and arthritis. And after so many years, I've done strange and bad things to my body. The Coca-Colas, the cigarettes, all the stuff. Got away from just about all that.
What is it, Dave, that you've moved toward? Is there something that you're doing, like maybe in the past you used to smoke, and now there's something that you're doing every day that you feel excellent about?
Breathing better, as Andrew said, relaxing a lot more.
So what about the breath?
Just learning how to make it flow in and flow out more easily instead of being all blocked up.
Okay, so like drawing the breath kind of into the stomach and pushing the stomach out actually when you breathe in, and lengthening the inspiration through the nose, because ideas come to us on the inspiration.
And that's relaxing itself too.
And especially lengthening the inspiration through the nose, this is really what taps into feeling states of ecstasy. Whenever you're feeling ecstasy, the reason why is because your respiration has changed and there's been a lengthening of the inspiration occur through your nose. And so ideas come to us on the inspiration. That's where this word comes from. All of our words originally come from verbs, doing words. And with our expressive self is with our breath out. So you could certainly say that the regulation of the breath changes the state. This is a major switching mechanism, more or less. Okay.
My name is Carol Martin, and what I'm learning now, I'm trying to understand myself better, how what I do affects other people, and how other people affect me, and how I respond to that.
Okay. What about the person who, like the comedian that you see on television or something, and all of a sudden, like the comedian, cracks a joke and it just doesn't seem to take, right? The joke just doesn't seem to take. Now, there's two things that can happen that you've seen. You've seen the comedian just kind of remain completely inside their body, and eventually everybody laughs. And we've also seen the comedian realise that the joke, and then you hear the comedian say inside their mind, hasn't taken. And in that moment that the comedian is thinking that, the comedian is out there with you, looking back. If I were the comedian, I would be like, if I was feeling you were judging me, I would be looking back at myself. To be able to feel judged, whenever I'm using judgment, okay, always the reference point generally is outside self. It's quite a strong possibility that the reference point will be outside self. It'll only take I don't know, for some of you, maybe you're already realising this, that it's possible for someone to be operating outside their body. And that one way a person operates outside their body is if they're going through life sensing others are judging them. So the comedian who cracks this joke and it kind of really just doesn't take for a bit, and you see this comedian, they just stay inside their body and they just wait for it. And the dryness is all of a sudden, it's going to make people laugh. We love it when the comedian stays integrated. And we know immediately when they become dissociated. And we ourselves, we kind of start to feel a little uncomfortable for the comedian when we sense the comedian is dissociated. So I think if you can act foolishly, and that can be okay, I think then you can fool anybody. And to love your wildness, and to experience some of your craziness. And if someone says, "Oh, you're crazy," well then bless that person because they've given you permission to be this way. All right. Okay.
My name is Joe, and I'm learning how to control negative thoughts.
I think I was in a spot like that, Joe, and I really was in a quandary, and I was with a mentor of mine, and I really went over this thought, right, and then my mentor said to me that I would not arrive where I wanted to go by thinking about this, and well, that was interesting to me because I had always thought before this that the way for me to arrive somewhere would be to actually think through something actually, and then I would arrive there. And my mentor was saying no, that I would not arrive there by thinking about this at all. But that I would be in need of creating a condition of space to exist where fresh insight could come from my intuitive self. And that whilst I was engaging the speaking apparatus of my brain, and I was involving logic and reason, that I was not accessing the intuitive part of myself. And this mentor told me to go ahead and use all the rationalization I could so that I would learn its shortcomings. And then later on my mentor said that I would have to give up this idea of reason and logic and fact based on historical fact. Because my mentor said to me that this is not about the future, but much more about the past. And that I would be better off living in my intuitive self, where I would have the use of all of my brain. That sometimes somebody would say something to me and it might make logic, but might not make sense to me intuitively. It's possible that everybody heard that the commies were coming, right? And that made sense to everybody, but then when everybody looked out their window, the intuition was maybe telling you something else. And I bet if you can think back to that moment when the first person shared with everybody and they said, "Oh, well, you know something, I've got this theory that the sun is evolving, that the earth is evolving around the sun. That the sun is evolving around the earth." Well, everybody knew that the sun was evolving around the earth. They could see that. But it sounded a little strange that the earth was actually evolving around the sun. And a good friend of mine one day was really in a bit of a quandary and feeling depressed. And I asked them what they were thinking about. And they said, "Well, I'm thinking about this thing that's making me mad. I'm thinking about this thing and I'm trying to figure out what it is and how I get this way." So we get what it is that we focus on. And if Joe was teaching me something and you were to focus on my problem, that would be a statement about the direction that you were taking me in. And whilst you would take me in that direction, you would be taking me away from my embarked upon my intended outcome. Because what the problem is not what the resource is. And the main thing is that Joe is experiencing the bottomless abyss inside himself. And I think that's excellent. That it's possible that some thought can come up from this bottomless abyss, and then now what about the person who's trying to control their mind or tame their mind? I would say it's true, there's a bottomless abyss in each of us, and once you accept this, then you can get on with everything else. And that we get what it is that we focus on. So we're going to be talking about how to develop ability to regulate the internal voice, regulate internal dialogue. And I would say the quickest way to the top is to be able to regulate internal dialogue.
The quickest way to what?
The quickest way to the top. The fastest way to the top is to be able to regulate internal dialogue. So we're going to be, I'll share some techniques with you, and we're going to be talking about this, about how you go about regulating internal dialogue. Yeah. Okay. Good one, Joe.
Recommend or see that. I've learned that through persistence and having a passion for what you do, that you can do just about anything you want.
What's your name again?
Recommend or see.
Hi, I'm Libby, and what I've learned in this last year is the power and magic of my drum, and the peace that is brought to the internal peace that I feel. And that the world, in spite of all of its problems, there are still beautiful people in Israel, in John, Virginia, and that's what I'm
Libby really has a wonderful heartbeat, and I'm sure we'll get to experience this heartbeat. We're going to experience Libby's heartbeat many times through this 14 days, and I think we're going to do a sweat lodge, and we're going to do a fire walk, and isn't that an amazing thing that I think the first time I found out that people in the same room together, all of a sudden their heartbeats start to beat together, and people start to breathe together. This was amazing to me to hear this, because I realized that we were instinctively social, that out of consciousness that this was occurring. So the drum reminds us of our own heartbeat, our mother's heartbeat, and the pulse of the heartbeat of the sun that sends a pulse out into the universe. So we'll do a session on electromagnetic energy, and we're going to do a session on healing, and we're going to go a little bit into the ultradian rhythms that's occurring, and you'll be able to recognize trance states from these ultradian rhythms. You know what an ultradian rhythm is? It's a rhythm that occurs within the day. There's a rhythm that's occurring every 90 to 120 minutes. Your brain is has completely switched from the left to the right and back to the left, or the right to the left, back to the right.
What is it called?
Ultradian rhythm. So that at one phase, as I'm talking now, I wonder which hand everybody is feeling. Yes, you're right. Who?
Left.
Left.
That's putting my left on the right knee.
Okay, left. Left. Okay, anybody else? Penny? Right. Right.
Let's see if I understand it by giving you an example. Tennis matches going on. Two pros playing professional tennis in an exhibition in a game. One pro is dominating the other. He's operating at the right side of the ring. And about 9 minutes later, his game starts to deteriorate. Could he switch back to his left side of the ring?
Yes, true. For somehow or other, that's what has happened. Yes, true. So actually, there's really quite a science, and also there's a way of regulating this switching. So, for instance, one thing you would be doing you would certainly be kind of imagining that you still have the ability to play out of your brain, right? Because the minute that you would start to think about what you were doing, that would be it.
That's when he announces that he's lost his concentration.
Yeah. Hi, Carlita. Hi, sweetie. Come on in. Good on you. So those of you who are feeling you were right hand just then, okay, you are processing this information and you have access to your logic and your ability to see